How about this? Men are more oppressed than women.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
You want to bite on that one?
Oh, you're really trying to
You're in the hot
cast a
seat.
line here, huh? Oh, man. I feel like there's... Yeah, okay. Sure. Well, why do you say that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about like rights and stuff, you know? So I can think of 3 examples of things that strictly impact men that don't really impact women. So first off, and this is immediately upon birth, why I would think men are more oppressed than women. So upon birth, the vast majority of men in this country are get circumcised, which I view as child genital mutilation. It's done without their consent. I am against it. Women are not having their lady bits circumcised in this country on birth. So that's a pretty major issue that I view that impacts, that's immediately upon birth, men are treated unequally to women. The next is forced military conscription. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. If we were to combine and add up all of women's collective grievances throughout all time, all the grievances, no right to vote, apparently you couldn't, there's something about bank accounts, couldn't have a bank account, inequality in the workplace, et cetera, unfair gender expectations, whatever. Put them all together, compare them to forced military conscription. I would argue that is a bigger grievance than all of women's collective grievances combined.
So circumcisions and draft?
No, just forced military conscription.
And
That's a bigger grievance, a bigger gender grievance than all of women's collective grievances.
And then what's your third?
No, I'm kind of veering off here and just saying like whatever the feminists want to say is a terrible grievance upon women. I'm coming and saying, well, actually, this one sole grievance experienced nearly exclusively by men is worse than all of your grievances combined together.
No, it's experienced just exclusively by men. Here.
I mean, they're going to argue, well, in World War II, there was a Soviet sniper force of 1,000 women.
Yeah, no,
but
that would be the Soviet, though. So here in the United States, totally agree.
Well, I was even just arguing like worldwide when it came to military conscription, almost all battles dating back thousands of years, it's men have been forced to go to war and die and women haven't. And that is a bigger grievance. And you know what? I'll even say just World War I and World War II, the suffering that men exclusively endured in warfare is a bigger grievance than all of women's historical collective grievances combined.
That's crazy.
How's that crazy?
Damn, that's crazy.
What, give me an example. I'll allow you to give me one example that's worse than forced military conscription. That women
In World War II?
give me just
general.
military
In
conscription.
general.
Give me one example.
Octopus Tetro donated $100. Brian, look to the scriptures of Christ and you will see the need of circumcision. When we look at what God himself wants from us, it's necessary. Malek, you're from a Muslim culture, but look to Jesus.
I mean,
Malek came from Orthodox
saying
Christianity, if I
circumcision is
remember
mandatory?
correctly.
Yes, I'm mixed. I'm also Armenian, and I grew up with Armenian culture, and Armenia was the first Christian nation, so I'm Christian.
I mean, I don't actually know what the Christian position is on circumcision. I don't know, Andrew, if you're able to weigh in on this, but
It's mixed. There's been a big fight about it, especially over the last 100 years. So I'm not gonna dive too much into that. You would need somebody who had more nuance of church affairs than me when it comes to circumcision. But yeah, there's a big fight about it even now.
yeah, I mean, it occurs to me though, if you take a secular look at circumcision, you remove the religious component. I mean, on its own, it occurs to me that it's a rather barbaric practice.
I don't know.
But bringing it back to you, okay, state one gendered grievance that women have experienced that's worse than forced military conscription.
I mean, I guess the outcomes of going to war.
What do you-
The outcomes of like what happens with women and like cities that are invaded.
So Hillary Clinton in the 90s said something along the lines of, women are the primary I think she said, women and children are the primary victims of war. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think everyone's a victim of war, so no.
But everyone's a victim. But do you agree that women are the primary victims of war?
No.
Who are the primary victims of war?
I think all of the human species is.
But the,
No, who are the primary victims of war?
I have to name a man or a woman. That's my two options.
No,
like a group.
Well, so let me try to frame it better, make
Yeah.
it a little easier. If you had to choose
Yep,
which
there we go.
sex,
That's what I just
if you
asked.
had to choose which sex, would you say is men or women who are primarily affected by warfare?
This is crazy.
it's not crazy. You
Wait,
just
wait,
don't.
no, let her answer. Go ahead.
I'll say women.
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 Wait, so
And why?
Put it-
Why would you say that?
put women are what? Put it in your own words. Women are what?
The main victim of war.
Wait,
oh my
what?
God,
You
this
didn't
is
get
so-
what, Nick? You didn't.
That women are the main victim of war.
Why?
Okay.
How?
This is why people shouldn't go to get a master's degree. After the first
So
4 years.
why? I think Andrew was asking, why are women the primary victims of war?
Well, in the case I'm thinking of, World War II, and
Yeah, World War II. Sure. Let's use World War II. Okay.
like in Asia, for example, you have men who can fight. They have weapons. They're able to protect themselves. Let's say, yes, outcome of war, a lot of people die on both sides. There's a lot of cases where nothing can happen, like a nuke, for example, or a bomb. There's a lot of cases where I'm not saying this is generalized for everything, but they had competitions where they would go into villages and R-word the women, kill them after. This happened to like children in front of the mothers, things like that, which is
Okay, so let's assume that's true, right?
It is
Yeah,
true.
you're
Sure.
talking
No,
about
but-
you're talking about Nanking.
well, it didn't
Yeah,
just happen
it occurred
there.
to yeah. I thought she was talking about Vietnam, but
It
No,
happened
no,
in the
she's talking
Philippines
about-
too.
Sure,
look,
World War
yes,
II,
but
Nanking.
in war, yes, okay. Let's say let's just agree with you. Yes, in war, rape occurs. Rape is terrible. It occurs. So your position is because rape occurs in war, women are the primary victims of war.
Well, I'm not saying that is like the only.
Let's say 100,000 women. I'm making up a number here. I don't know what the truth is. Let's say during World War II, 100,000 women were raped, and 20 million men were killed in World War II. Who's the primary victim of war
But it's
in
not
World War
just
II?
men dying in World War II. It's also women dying. They aren't just
The
getting
men are
R-worded.
forced to put
Wait.
their life on the line.
What You mean are you talking about civilian casualties
Yeah,
or
civilians, of course.
Okay, but now let's add on the 20 million military deaths. I might have my numbers wrong a little bit here, but so let's assume military deaths are like nearly exclusively male, like 99.99% male.
Okay.
Okay, so you have 20 million male military deaths versus let's exclude civilian populations because there's
Okay.
male civilian populations too. Let's just say only women are getting raped, right? 100,000 women get essayed. Who is the primary victim of war?
In the case you just described,
So let's say there's 20 million male deaths, military deaths, and then there's 100,000 women who are essayed, civilians.
okay.
Who's the primary victim of war?
In that case, men.
Okay, so you've just made a case for
If you're
all
cutting
war.
out civilian casualties to prove this
Which-
point,
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Then men.
but he can, especially since you're specifically looking at the United States. So, for instance, of the 292,000 members of the U.S. military who were killed by enemy fire, 16 of them total were female. 16
of the
from the
United States. Yeah.
Total. 16. from the United States for all of World War II, all of it.
Yep.
So who would you say then was the worst victim of war for, at least for the United States, if you just like had to choose?
The men.
The men. Now, if we were to go stat by stat, nation by nation, you're going to find something very similar to this. Because women, you may not know this, are actually usually protected in warfare conditions. Now, it is true that the communists did horrible things to their own population, the populations that they conquered. That is true. They did. The Russians especially. I mean, they went through Berlin, did horrific things to the women, but still predominantly the ones who suffered the most in even the European nations were men. I mean, just the casualty rates alone, as Brian is indicating, were overwhelmingly disproportionate. So knowing this new information, did you maybe want to change your answer?
What's the casualty rates on both?
On which, well,
On
I mean,
female and
we've
male.
already
Did you pull it up?
Female and you mean female soldiers?
No,
Or
I'm saying female civilians, anything.
civilians.
Yeah, if you want to know the disproportionate rate between the two, we can look those stats up for you as well. But under the assumption for a second that it is true that they were disproportionately male, because they were, would you then still concede? Or would you say, no, women are still the victims, the primary victims?
I never even agreed with that original point. You said you have to choose one. I said I think all humans are victims of war.
No, but when-
Well, no, and then when you modified your answer, you said women, though.
You said
No,
women.
I modified it because you made me modify it. You said choose men or
well, yeah.
women.
But
what
you-
I did was I said if you had to choose between one sex or the other,
Yes.
which would you choose? You said women. So we're obviously asking that question so we can test your logic as to why you would pick women.
I chose that answer, and I said this is because of what goes on in war, the invasion of cities and things like that, where women will get attacked, SA,
And
the
what
ARD.
what
and-
happens to the men?
They will get SA'd, but sometimes up to 1/3 to 2/3 of the entire civilian population of men are put to the sword. And women usually don't have to deal with that problem. They get carried off as basically trophies, and they get to live. And the men
Not
get put on
necessarily.
spikes. That's what happens.
They don't allow them to live sometimes.
Sometimes that's true, but most of the time it's not true. Most of the time, when you're looking at the disproportionate rate of men versus women who are butchered in these massacres, it's still generally men. And the reason for that is because they don't want to leave an enemy at their back of possibly capable, able-bodied soldiers who could come after them. That's why that occurs that way.
I am saying in war, I think that what goes on with when they invade certain cities and villages, things like that, I think not being able to defend yourself is very scary, right? I think that makes them
Can't
victims.
defend themselves either, if it's a civilian population.
Yeah, of course,
Good
but
thing we're in the U.S.
And yet, so the men are the ones, though, that are usually gathered up and systematically exterminated first. It is true that women do have to experience things like SA and things like this, but generally, many, many, many times more of them are allowed to live.
Also, you brought up defending yourself, but earlier you said you're against guns.
Wait,
We're talking about
don't
war.
don't derail. Wait, so who's the primary victim of war?
oh my gosh. Can I say all
on
humans again?
No, you have to
Stand
you
on
have to pick.
business.
I guess we'll pick women.
We haven't made a convincing enough case to change your mind at all on this. I have a video. Let's pull up a video really quick. Nick, can you go to the private chat? Before you pull it up, let me just read two chats here. Maddie, can you read this one?